Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ingrid and this is Ingrid Reads a Lot. In today's video, as you can see from the title, I'm doing the mid-year book freakout tag. I love this tag. I love watching other people do it, and so I figured I would do it. But if you're curious to know all my answers to these questions, then let's get started. If you can hear any noise, it was raining and now the streets are wet and the cars are driving by, so you might be able to hear that. Just ignore it. I am going to link the original creators of this tag in my description box, but I did get the questions from Kayla from Books and Lala, and she did add some extra questions to her tag, but I think I'm only going to answer one of her extra questions because the other two have to do with like channel stuff, which I haven't been good at. So the first question in this tag is, how is your reading going? And my reading is not going as planned. It's definitely going a lot slower than I thought it was going to. I have been sort of slumpy, especially since I went on vacation for 2 weeks, and that always throws me off. But yeah, for the months of April and March, I was definitely slumpy. So April and May, I'm sorry. In July, I started reading a lot, and whenever I start reading a lot, it makes me excited to create videos, so here we are. But yes, I have not been doing the best in my reading year, although I've read some really good things in July, so here's hoping. Next question is best book you've read so far in 2024, and I am going to say two books that I actually don't own. I read them on, one was in my Kindle and the other one was through Audible. The first one we're going to talk about is a memoir by Patrick Gagne. She wrote a memoir about what it is like to be a sociopath and all of what that entails. I was curious about reading this book because I think what media portrays someone with this mental disorder is probably not accurate, and so I wanted to hear from someone that actually was going through this, and how, you know, in the book she talks about how it was growing up and how it is trying to, like, she knew she was different from other people, but it was very interesting to see what it felt like and what was going through her mind when she was a child as all these things are happening. And then after she got a diagnosis, like how she dealt with that, having a family and what that means, because I think media portrays people with this mental disorder as people that are incapable of loving others and things like that, and that's not exactly true. And so I was really interested in reading this and seeing from someone that actually has the disorder, like from her perspective. I really enjoyed this. It was definitely one of my favorite books of the year so far. All right, and then the next book we have to talk about is Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. This is a science fiction novel, but I would call it more literary fiction about this robot named Annie and her discovering herself. This is a lot about what it is to be human, what it is to have control of yourself, and discovering what that means. Because Annie was created to be a cuddle bunny, which is a robot that is made for intimacy in this world. And so she has this person that she's with, and she's in a relationship with him, but she's still just a robot. And so there's a lot of things that you read, and it's very emotional, and it is sort of triggering at times, especially if you've had emotionally abusive relationships. This was so good, and I just loved reading from Annie's perspective and sort of seeing her become who she was meant to be, and very interesting. I really enjoyed it, but do check your triggers if you want to get into this one. But it's very good. I gave this 5 stars, and it's definitely one of my favorites of the year, and I couldn't pick between the two because they're such different books. All right, and the next question is best sequel you've read so far, and I'm gonna have to give that to, let me grab it because it's sitting over here because it's so big. House of Flame and Shadow by Sergi Mass. This is the conclusion to the Crescent City trilogy. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think this book sort of redeemed the series for me because I enjoyed the first book and I despised the second book, which is House of Sky and Breath. And I read this because I really wanted to know what was going to happen, and because of some things that I was like sort of hearing on the internet, which are spoilers, so I'm not going to say anything, but I figured I need to give this a try and see what's happening. And everything that I hated about the first book, I feel like this book did better, and it made me really enjoy my reading. This definitely is a lot plot centered and like world building centered, or like world discovery, I guess I should say. The romance between the two main characters takes a backseat in this book, which I really enjoyed, because I feel like book 2 we got a lot of that. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I was surprised because I didn't think I was going to after the debacle with the second book. And then the other book that I'm going to say for this I don't own, and that's Defiant by Brandon Sanderson, and this is the conclusion to the Skyward series. I really love this. I was sort of nervous for the last book because endings are just not my thing. Like, I tend to not love endings, and so I was really nervous because I really liked the entire series as a whole. Skyward is about this girl, Spensa, I think is her first name. They live in this world, it's a sci-fi novel, and these people live in this world where they've been sort of trained to fight these little alien that come into their world, like from the sky. And so they live underground, and Spensa wants to be a fighter pilot. She is just very closed off because years ago her father used to be a fighter pilot, but he was accused of treason. Everyone sort of treats her differently because of her father, and she also has her own sort of like biases towards people and expecting them to automatically dislike her. The first book that's what it's about, but obviously the series goes in a whole different direction. It's really interesting and I really enjoyed it. It's a YA sci-fi. If you're interested, go pick it up. It's very good. And then we have favorite reread of the year so far, and I'm gonna say Heir of Fire for this one. We are rereading this together. I'll link Bethany's video down in the description box, her announcement video, but basically we are rereading the entire Sarah J Maas universe and doing live shows on Bethany's channel. And so if you're interested, I'll link her channel down below so you can see us talking about it. I love this book. This is definitely my favorite of the series, I think. So far, I'll say that. I do really love the later books too, so I'm not going to say this is definitely my favorite for sure, but I think it is. This is the third book in the series, Throne of Glass, if you didn't know. If you didn't, where have you been? This is where we get a lot of character growth and building for our main character, Selena, and we meet the male love interest in this book. His name is Rowan. I really love him and I love their relationship. This book is very much character driven and it's just about the characters. Not a lot happens and I really love it. And I think if you don't love a character driven story, you're not gonna like this. And I think there are people that don't enjoy this book. We also meet other characters in here that I love, Manon and Abraxos and the 13, and I think this world really just expands the world of Throne of Glass a lot from the first 2 books. And yeah, it's one of my favorites. It's definitely my favorite. I think so. Okay, and then genre you've been loving / reading the most, and definitely fantasy. I was looking through my reading tracker. That's the one I read the most, and that's encompasses all sorts of fantasy, not just epic fantasy. I think this also includes like romantasy because I didn't separate those. But I think something I've also been reading quite a lot, which is like contemporary romance, which I don't normally read that much, but because I've been so slumpy, I think that's what I've been enjoying reading because I don't have to think too much about it. There's not this big plot and world that I have to follow. I've been quite enjoying it. Also, small town romance I've been really enjoying because it's very like mellow, fun, cute, and not a lot of things going on. But yeah, those are the 2 genres I've been reading the most. And then new releases you haven't read yet but want to. And the 2 books I picked for this are horror, and there's no particular reason why. I just thought of those 2. But the first one is Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. I actually bought it, but it's far away and I don't want to go get it, so I'll put a picture up. But this is about a horror movie that was filmed, and it's kind of like haunted movie type thing, which I really enjoy. That trope in horror books where it's about like a haunted film and movie. I don't really know much else about it, but me and Paul Tremblay don't have the best track record because I really love his book, A Head Full of Ghosts, but then I read The Cabin at the End of the World and I didn't love that, and so I think this will be the tiebreaker. Oh, I also read The Pallbearers Club last year and I despised it. I really, really, really didn't like it. So this one, I was sort of skeptical to pick it up because I don't know if I'm gonna like it, but I feel like it's gonna be the one that says, okay, really, you do like Paul Tremblay or you don't, you know? And then the other book I want to talk about is The Eyes of the Best Part by Monica Kim. This is another horror, like I said, and this is about a Korean American family, and the daughter of the family, I guess, becomes obsessed with eyeballs, and hoariness ensues, I guess. That's all I know really about this, but it sounds really interesting and I want to read it, and it's been getting a lot of good reviews. Lots of people I like to watch on YouTube really liked this book, so I do want to pick it up and see if I enjoy it too. All right, and then it said the next question is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And for sure, this is, I'm going to give it to TJ Klune. The name of the book is Somewhere Beyond the Sea. And this is the follow-up to The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I adored when I read. And I think this is what, I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I feel like this book kind of set off this theme of cozy fantasy for sure. Because, and I'm not saying he invented it, but I feel like since then there's been a lot more cozy fantasy, which I quite enjoy. I want to read the sequel to this. I hope I really like it. Honestly, I don't even know what the plot is about, but I love the world, so I really don't care as long as it's in the same world. Then we have The Seventh Veil of Salome, and I'll put a picture up because I loved this cover. And I know I try not to judge a book by how much I love the cover, but like it made me want to read it. Oh, and this is by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, which is an author that I tend to really like her synopses for these books. And then when it comes to execution, it really falls short for me. I'm hoping that I will enjoy this one. This is also about a movie, I think, or it's about 1950s Hollywood, which I think this is the second book that she's written in this sort of same world. But I did see that this is more mystery thriller as opposed to horror, because I feel like her past books that I've read and not enjoyed, like Silver Nitrate, which is about a haunted movie, and what was the other one that I read? Oh, the really popular one, Mexican Gothic. Those two books are supposed to be horror, but I didn't click with those, so I'm hoping that this will be good. I think this is about an actress that is supposed to play the role of Salome from the Bible. I believe Salome is in the Bible, isn't she? She gets into like a beef with another actress, and it sounds like it's gonna be a mystery thriller. So I'm gonna try this again, like with Paul Tremblay. This is gonna be the last chance I give this author, and I keep saying that, so who knows if it actually will be the last chance. But she always gets me, man, with these like really good blurbs, like, and then it just doesn't work. Just does not work for me. All right, let's get catty. And we have Biggest Disappointment. And so far, I really didn't like Throne of the Fallen by Kara Maniscalco. I have to get, this was actually in my unhaul pile that I still haven't gotten rid of, but I didn't like this. This is supposed to be a adult fantasy with fae. Our main character, Camilla. This is also set in like a Victorian London, but it's not really London. Our main character, Camilla, she works in a art gallery, and then she kind of gets mixed up with envy because someone is blackmailing her. Envy is one of the demons, like of the 7 sins. I think there's like envy, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we get the perspective from her and Envy, and they sort of have to kind of get together to help each other. I really enjoyed the first half of this book, but it really went downhill from there. And this is sort of like a romance book, so you know what happens. They sort of get together, but I did not enjoy their relationship. I think because we were reading from Envy's point of view, you knew what he was thinking, and I didn't enjoy it. And so I'm DNFing this one. And then the other one that I was disappointed by was The Invisible Life of Addie Larue by V. Schwab. I know everyone loves this. I read this with friends, by the way, and we have a live show on Elle's channel that I can link down below if you're curious to hear more of my in-depth thoughts, because I basically bitched about this book for 2 hours. But I think that this had potential to be an amazing story, like an amazing journey for 300 years that this main character is alive. It wasn't. It was very character driven, and I think when you don't like a character and the book is all about them, it's really frustrating. So that's all I have to say for now, but you can check out that video if you're curious, but that's it. Okay, and then we are back to not being so catty. We have Biggest Surprise, and that I don't own either of these books either, but I'll put pictures up. The first one is Bride by Addie Hazelwood. This is her first foray into like a paranormal romance, because I think this author primarily writes contemporary romance with women in STEM. I really loved this. I have tried one of her other books, Love Hypothesis. Yes, and I didn't like that at all. This is about our main character, Misery, and she's a vampire, and basically her father tells her she has to marry the alpha wolf of another clan to sort of keep their alliance together. These two groups of supernaturals are in an alliance, but it's kind of shaky, you know? So her dad makes her marry this man, and love ensues. But I really enjoyed the world too, and I hope that we get more books in this world, because the sort of political information that you get is very interesting too, like what is actually going on behind the scenes. So I'm interested. I hope she writes more books. And because I didn't like Love Hypothesis, I keep like, my brain wants to say Love Hypothetically. Is that a book or a movie? Because it just keeps going to that. Anyway, because I didn't like that one, I wasn't quite sure I was going to enjoy this one, and I did, so that's why it's surprised. And then I also read Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. This is a thriller / mystery novel. It is this author's like most popular work, I think. She has a ton of reviews on Goodreads, and I tend sometimes not to like the authors, especially with like thrillers, their most popular book. And an example is Frida McFadden. I read The Housemaid, which I believe is definitely her most popular book, and I really didn't like it. And then I read Never Lie, which is another book by her, which I loved. So I went into this sort of skeptical. It's about two women that have gone missing, and they live in the same neighborhood, and you're reading from multiple perspectives to try to figure out what happened. So you're going back from present to past to see what happened, to see if they're related, and basically what the heck happened. And the reason why I really enjoyed this book was because the whole time I was reading it, up until like 90% of the book, I didn't know what was going on. Like, I didn't know who had done it, you know? And I love that, because when I can figure it out, it kind of bums me out, because I'm like, oh, this was predictable, you know? But I do have to say that I do read a lot of mystery thrillers, and I love trying to figure out what is happening. So I read it very like, you know, like old school detective. Like, I have my magnifying glass here and I'm trying to figure out clues. So I shouldn't blame the authors that much if I can figure it out, but that's what I do. Anyway, I was pleasantly surprised by this because I didn't see the end coming, and I really enjoyed it. All right, and then we have favorite new author, and it could be a debut author or new to you, and I'm gonna say new to me, which is T. Kingfisher. This year is the first year that I've read any of her books. I read Nettle and Bone and What Moves the Dead. And I have What Moves the Dead over here so I can show you the cover. And this one is like a horror novella, and Nettle and Bone is more like a dark fairy tale. But I won't talk too much about it because it's the answer for another question. Anyway, I really love this author. I think I'm excited for her other books, and I'm excited for new things she's gonna write in her backlist. Okay, and then newest favorite character, I kind of struggled with this question, but I'm gonna say Annie. I really loved hearing from her perspective and sort of like going on this self-discovery journey with her, and what it means to be a woman, what it means to be autonomous. And I really loved it, even though it wasn't like, it's definitely not a happy book, but I really enjoyed it. And then we have Book That Made You Cry, and please don't laugh at my answer, because I have read this book multiple times, and I don't know why this was the time that it made me cry. I'm sure it did other times too, but this is a time that I'm like, what the heck, Ingrid, you've read this like 5 times, like why? And it's Air Fire. And I don't know, I was like thinking about it, like why it made me cry. I don't know if it's because this time I really am trying to be conscientious of what I'm reading, because we're doing the whole readathon for the entire like universe. So I'm trying to pick out like things that could have different meanings, or things that we could see in other books, and pick up things that are going to happen further in the series. And so I'm like really paying attention to this. The scene that Rowan is tattooing her just made me bawl my eyes out. And if you know, you know, you know? It's just so freaking sad. And yeah, anyway, that's it. I'm not gonna ramble on, which I already have done, but okay, book that made you happy. And this is when I was gonna show you Nettle and Bone. I absolutely love this. This is a dark fairy tale. Our main character, Mara, going on a quest to save her sister from an abusive marriage, but it's set in like a fairy tale. And she has to do these things to be able to save her sister. And one of them is to make a dog out of bones. And we also meet Bone Dog, and he's so freaking adorable. And she meets like, it's like a found family type thing. I just really enjoyed it, and it's tiny and short, and it packs such a punch. I really loved it. Next question is most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received, and I have two to show you. First up is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett, and I'm actually reading this right now. I'm about 72 pages in, and I love, this is the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. I really, really love this cover. It's so pretty, and I'm actually really liking the book too. And then The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. I love this because of the sprayed edges, but the cover is really pretty too. It's like a little tiny cabin, and it looks very cozy. This is Sarah Beth Durst's first cozy fantasy, I will say. She also wrote Queen of Blood, and the name of the series is Queens of Renthia, I believe. I will either say yes or no when I edit this, but I loved that series, and so I'm excited to see what like her take on a cozy fantasy is. I'm excited to read this. I probably will read this soon. All right, and then we have the last question, which is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And all I typed in when I was like filming this was all of them, because I had like a video in the beginning of the year where I said like 24 books I want to read in 2024, and I sort of read a couple, and I've read 7 of those books. So if you're curious, I'll put the link up of the video, but basically I need to read all those books. I definitely need to read The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This is also really pretty. It's sprayed. That's another thing that I've been noticing more recently, like the very bedazzled books, and I'm loving it, honestly. Like all these books are coming out like so beautiful. I feel like the publishers are like really putting a lot of effort into these books, or maybe they're not, but I'm noticing that a lot more books are coming out like sprayed, which I love. So anyway, back to what I was saying. I want to read this because I like all of Leigh Bardugo's books so far, pretty much, except for, what was the other one that I didn't like? What is that book called? I can think of the name of the second book. It's Hellbent. What's the first one called? Ninth House. That's what it's called. My god. Anyway, you're probably watching being like, it's Ninth House, because I do that all the time too. Anyway, I didn't like that one. So this is another adult fantasy, but I think this is more historical fantasy because it's set in Spain, but it's set a long time ago. The Golden Age. I don't know when that was. But look at the inside of this book too. Look how beautiful that is. It's like a bunch of pomegranates, and also I love pomegranates, so I think they really did a good job on this book too. Anyway, I really want to read this because it sounds like up my alley. I do like historical fantasy or historical fiction, so we'll see. All right, and that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns down in the comments. Please subscribe to my channel. It helps keep me doing this because I need some accountability. I'll see you guys on the next one. Goodbye.